Welcome to the first broadcast episode of the AI in English podcast. And this is, for those of you who don't know, it's part of the EPAM Anywhere Club, so also associated with EPAM's EngX community. And EngX community is the ultimate destination for engineers that are looking to elevate their game and promote a culture of excellence. And if you're trying to find that online, if you go to aw.club, click on the community tab that's there, you'll find the EngX community. But we are here to talk to you about AI and robotics and other things that are going on in the world of technology, but primarily around the AI. My name's Gordon Mullan, so I am one of EPAM's lead business analysts, but much more operating in the product ownership space these days. But I've been fascinated by disruptive technologies for many years and have done a number of talks around these for EPAM, and you'll find some of those on YouTube if you go looking for them. And also, welcome to my co-host, Govind.
Oh, hi. I'm Govind Shukla. I lead the insurance business analysis and product practice in the UK for us. So yeah, I live and breathe insurance, but a bit less interesting than a lot of exciting projects that Gordon gets to do. But I come at it from the same place that Gordon coming from is passionate about technology and AI and other advanced technologies and how they impact our businesses and our day-to-day lives. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this.
Well, welcome, Govind. It's good to have you here on the show. And one thing you will have noticed, because I talk quite a bit with my hands, is since the last time I saw you, I've had my nails painted.
Wow.
And there may be a few of you watching this and going, what on earth has he got his nails painted for? It's an initiative that I came across because I'm quite active on LinkedIn, called Hard as Nails. Came about by accident, actually. There was a guy called Sam Conniff, a little while ago, was taking his daughter to a Harry Styles concert, and she wanted to go and have her nails done. And as girls sometimes do, oh, dad, go on, have your nails painted as well. So he did, and then he couldn't get the nail polish off afterwards. But it triggered all sorts of conversations around, masculinity and what does that mean? And there's lots of different ways to be a man and breaking out the traditional man box. And a lot of people for kind of mental health issues, when they feel forced into the definition of being a person that doesn't really fit them. And it doesn't have to be painting your nails. It might be you like, I don't know, ballet, or you do something that's, not traditionally male. I'm dance. I have done most of my life. Again, not something that's perhaps traditionally male. Real men don't dance. Well, hate to tell you, actually, women love men that dance. But this kind of then turned into a scientific study based on his experience. And he's now recruited hundreds of men up and down the country to paint their nails, and to do that. They're doing all the surveys and everything, sort of a pre-survey, a post-survey, and kind of an anonymous diary entries or observations, interactions that people have had during their time out and about, and what reactions they're getting from people and what conversations that triggers, how it makes people feel. There was an interesting one actually I saw in the big WhatsApp group chat that we've got, where one of the guys who has lots of things that would mark him out perhaps as not traditionally male. So, he's queer, he's Jewish, he's bisexual, I think, number of things. But all of those things, unless he tells somebody, they wouldn't know just by looking at him. And he's one of them that's painted his nails. And he suddenly realized for the first time there's a physical characteristic that he can't hide unless he wears gloves. But it started to make him appreciate what it's like for people who are, people of color or female, or, any of these kind of characteristics where you can't hide who or what you are. So for him, it was a novel experience of vulnerability as well. So yeah, there's been some interesting experiences come out of it.
I think this is brilliant. And I think that it's very controversial and people discuss about it a lot. But I think that in India, where I come from, it's part of the tradition, basically. So one of our very very well-known gods is Krishna. And Krishna, by character, is known to be the one to lead Arjuna in the war and give him advice and make him lead the army, to even sometimes when Arjuna feels that why should I fight my own family, make him realize that it's the right thing to do for the end result of the world. And and the same character in the story is dancing with gopis and gopikas in a completely different setting. So it's like a very, very embedded core story in the Indian tradition. So I mean, when you show that to me, for me, it was like, yes, it's kind of natural, but I can see the side of the people not accepting it because of being burdened upon this
Yeah.
very fixed structure of masculinity bordered upon them. You can fight in a war, but you can dance as well. It's all right.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, you mentioned that one of the things that I looked into. I promise we will get onto the AI bit in a minute, so don't panic. But looking into the history of men painting their nails, actually, you go back to the Babylonian times, 3,500 BC, and the Babylonian warriors would paint their nails to intimidate their enemies.
There you
So
go.
anybody that says, painting your nails isn't masculine, go and look at history, and it was often used in places like China for marking out wealth and prestige. So yeah, it's the things that make what's masculine, what's feminine, etc. changes radically over time. It used to be pink for boys and blue for girls, and
Oh yes,
now
my
it's the other way
God.
around. So anyway, so
Yeah.
the purpose of that was just to kind of go, when I'm waving these about, that's why I've got my nails painted, especially for anybody that knows me is going, it looks a bit weird. So I will have these on for the next couple of weeks. So we'll be recording these episodes every couple of weeks. So I may or may not still have them. They are gel coat, so I went for
Oh,
kind of
there you go.
the more durable. So they're still in one piece, which is great. Anyway,
Oh,
like I said,
brilliant.
let's get on with the actual show itself, and let's start as usual with the big fish. And we're going to have to start with Google and the new tool that they've come out with, or that's been added to AI Studio, which is text-based image editing. Now, we've all been used to
Yeah.
using text to generate images, and there's loads and loads of tools that have done that. We've had them for years. They are getting much, much better. But this is where you can actually upload an existing image that you've taken with your camera or something, or your phone, but you can actually use then text prompts to edit it. So it's looking like the multimodality that we've been waiting for. And you can have a look at it on aistudio.google.com. So pop onto there and you can give it a go.
Yeah, I think honestly, Google were the pioneers even before this Gen AI kicked in. Their phones already had like being able to remove crowds of people and stuff like that. And I'm sure that's because they have a vast collection of image data from all these Android users, which gives them a bit of an advantage in comparison to others. And even still, there's comparison between Samsung photo editing stuff on the Samsung phones versus Apple, and Samsung's beat Apple hands down. And I'm sure, like it's just comes back to the fact that how better the algorithms can be. Now, Google is just taking the same thing to the next level. I'm assuming leveraging Gen AI, allowing you to basically say that, oh, by the way, I want to remove all the people except for my friend who's being funny just at a distance. So I don't want to get rid of them, but I want to get rid of everybody else. And I think it'll be interesting to play around with this and see the potential of it. I'm
Yeah.
sure people think of amazing ways to use this.
Absolutely, restoration or filling in missing parts or
Oh,
redrawing stuff. Apparently, the only thing is it doesn't have a handle on text on images too well. There are
yeah.
several of particularly the image generation tools that have now got basically really, really good at doing text. There's a few that I've used. But with this one as well, you can also use the feature through the API as well. So anybody that wants to give it a go, have a look on the Google's AI Studio.
Yeah, and I think this is just another milestone in the roadmap to say, text has been a challenge across all Gen AI platforms, barring some, but we will get there. I mean, being able to write with left hand and all this other stuff just because of the bias in the data. I mean, now we're in the world where 80% of data is going to be AI generated. So hopefully all these biases will get swallowed out.
Yeah, or and of course the flip side to that is it just
Oh,
amplifies it because it's been trained on bias and it generates more bias data and the whole problem just gets worse. So, yeah, definitely a problem to try and follow down. But of course, Google is also very famous for their open source stuff, and
yep.
I don't know whether you've seen they've now released Gemma 3, which they reckon is the best open non-reasoning model. So that's the reasoning non-reasoning, that's the thinking non-thinking side of
Correct.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like it has multiple variants like 1B, 4B, 12B, 27B, just like any other model has, just to allow people to use it for very small use cases locally versus a larger use case in a more distributed way. And the context window of that has increased to 128K. And the smaller 1B model still remains at 32K.
Yeah.
But the benefit is that it's finally multimodal.
Yeah, and that's great to see. And for those of you that aren't sort of familiar, when we're talking about 1B, 4B, we're talking about the billions of parameters that these models have. But with this one on Chatbot Arena, used to be called LMSys, apparently it's scoring 1,338 points, which is higher than O1 Mini, higher than O3 Mini, and O3 Mini High. So amongst the open source models, only DeepSeek's R1 surpasses it, but this one, Gemma 3, supports over 140 languages.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key thing is that that benchmark potentially now will be updated with OpenAI 4.5, but obviously we will have to wait and watch to see GPT 4.5 scoring similar or higher or lower, whatever it is. But the key thing is that 4.5 is a reasoning model, so this one for a non-reasoning model is almost like setting the benchmark.
Yeah, I mean, in the dry run of this we were doing, we were talking about, I think, Grok and the ping pong that it was having on the table, and I think that was just up in about the 1400s. So there wasn't an awful lot of difference between them. But for those of you that want to give it a go, you can try it on Hugging Face or in AI Studio, and it's also already available in Olama, and there are also some official quantized versions as well.
Yeah, and they've rolled out an AI mode in Google Search. So basically, it's using a Gemini 2.0 variant where
Oh,
there's an
that's
answer summarization. So you must have seen if you use Android anywhere, that when you now Google Search, you can basically search in AI mode, which is giving quite interesting results, which is because we're used to searching in the page ranked way. The Google has
yeah.
always gave responses. It's a refreshing, slightly refreshing way to search now, which is good.
Yeah, I think it is something that you have to request access through the labs.google.com.
Yes.
It's experiment 22, I believe. So you can go in there. And if you are a Google One AI premium subscriber, you do get priority for that as well. So moving from what we're used to as being very binary, if you like, search, it will return answers or it won't, where AI is doing that interpretation of what it's finding and feeding back to you. I think that's definitely going to take people a while to get used to, because if you've used any of the AI models that do search, so things like Perplexity or
Perplexity, yeah.
Grok can do search as well, and we'll get on to Perplexity in a moment, then it's a different style of search result. Yeah, interesting to see.
Yeah, I think
People try.
honestly that this is kind of the mainstay of this new market where competition is now based on the fact that how the search is changing and what the expectation of the end customer is now. The people just assume everything to be at least as good as ChatGPT. So I think that is difficult to then avoid all the hallucination and still be able to give the results out. And I think coming to Perplexity, they have rolled out now access to deep research for all users in 45 countries. So they did
Oh,
launch deep research for limited number of countries, but now they have said, let's go big. Let's try to roll out deep research more broadly. I believe honestly, the reason for doing this for them is to try and uh, spread out the message that deep research from OpenAI is not the only deep research available, and now Grok has it and Perplexity has it. So that just shows that the market is more level rather than OpenAI edging out everyone else. Because not everybody, not all end users go and check out these scores or benchmarks. They
yeah.
just use the systems.
Yeah. They go for the brand name, if you like. So we're all
Correct.
guilty of that. We go for the brand name, and it's not necessarily the best product. I think it is a bit cheeky. You've sort of there's deep. I think OpenAI's is deep research, Perplexity's is deep research, and I think Grok is deep search, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
So
Correct.
all sort of very similar names, and it's easy to get confused a little bit about who's doing what. But that new deep research one on Perplexity is apparently now running on a new model. So they've got the Gemini 2.0 flash thinking experimental. So that's one of these ones that does do the reasoning, does the chain of thought reasoning, and it's also able to break the problems down into intermediate steps. And I think that's really important, because that's starting to get into how we as humans, deal with problems and deal with trying to solve things, is sort of create that plan in our heads of, right, well, we need to do this step first and this step first, and I need to check that, and then combine the output of that step with that step to actually get to the final end result.
Yeah, and I think this was pretty made very popular with Agent GPT. I remember this was, I think, end of 2022 when I was trying to experiment with this open source Agent GPT, where it was actually giving you the same results. It had prompts baked into the background to break down all the tasks and show what steps they're going to take. So early views were there since 2022. It's just that to making it real in terms of taking those sub actions and basically defining the steps ahead based on the actions or definitions of reasoning ahead. So yeah, as you can see now, when you ask the question, it reasons and it modifies the reasoning itself while it's doing it. So that's going to be quite something that to look forward to, how Perplexity approaches this chain of thought reasoning model.
Yeah, I mean, the reasoning models that I've used, it's always a fascinating exercise to read the thinking, not just the output that it actually produces to you at an end. And with the Perplexity one, they're experimenting with a personalization feature, which means that it'll allow Gemini to take into account information from the Google apps and the services you use, so mail and calendar and maps and stuff like that. So at first it's only going to be the search history, but in the coming months the data from Google Photos and YouTube are going to get added as well. And I'm sure it'll get into the mail and calendar stuff later on if you granted access to that.
Yeah, so it's like Google is saying, apart from the traditional Gemini distribution channel for these AI products and features, they're also approaching it via Perplexity, because Perplexity knows they're competing against Grok and OpenAI, and they need a large player on their side. And it seems like they're pretty much siding completely with Google, and having Google Photos and YouTube is going to be a big bump, because that is the advantage Google brings if you partner with them. And I think that just will add value more broadly. So, for example, they are doing the Python interpreter for code execution, so that it use from the AI Studio that was added, and the API. So they are doing both. They're doing the similar things what Google is already doing in their AI Studio. Now they're bringing it in to the Perplexity Studio, which means that they do allow more range of tasks to be possible from their own platform.
Yeah. And apparently they've also got Gemini embeddings, so it's the first one, and they reckon that's the first one that's going to outperform all the competitors, and that works with code as well. So there's always lots of claims from the companies when they bring these things out, but we always have to wait a little while and actually see what the real world experience is with it.
Yeah, absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Now coming to the biggie, OpenAI, the person that, or the organization that racing ahead of all others, at least supposedly so, at least in positioning. So they finally have rolled out ChatGPT 4.5. Sam, I think, did tease this before launching, but it's finally rolled out to all ChatGPT Plus users. And the context window for Plus users is 32K. But remember, for Pro, because they're paying 200 quid a month, it's 128K, which means that it's almost 4 times higher context window, which you can imagine that would just be a step up in performance. But there's a limit of 50 messages per week. So every week the usage limit just kind of resets.
Yeah, resets. And this is where, we talked about the context window, and Gemini on its Gemma 3 open source models, that's 128K context window. So I think this is another part of the battle, isn't just how good the thinking is, how good the AI model is, but how much data can you feed it? Because I've been using our own EPAM Dial platform for doing some stuff recently, and was flying through it using the Anthropic Claude 3.7 model. and then ran into usage limits and ran into context limits with it, and that gets really frustrating. It can be brilliant,
Yes.
but it's like talking to a genius that can remember everything you've said for 5 minutes and then forgets it all.
Yeah.
And you kind of go, no, I was right in the middle of a really good kind of flow, and now like with this, you've hit, you've reached your message limit, or oops, you've hit the context limit of how much it can take in. So we're seeing this growing rapidly, and I think it will become essentially a non-issue over the next few years, but for the time being, it definitely does get in the way at times.
It does. So if you're generating really long script, I was just doing an experimental script of Python. It was going into 1,500 lines of code. And I think there's some kind of limit between 1,200 lines of code, 1,500 lines of code. It's quite efficient code, but if you try to, after that point, try to make the model understand new concepts beyond that, it starts dropping the old concepts. And that's really
Frustrating.
frustrating. So I think that I've not got the experience for the Pro 128K yet, but I'm sure those people will be able to go up to maybe 3,000, 3,500 lines code, or potentially even modular code, which is more efficiently managed across different files instead of all generated as part of a single script. So that's yet to be seen.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, one of the things that these models power, or OpenAI's model powers, is their operator product. So
Oh,
this is where
yes.
it's actually able to use the tools on your computer. And now it is finally rolling out in the EU, albeit with the Pro subscription. So again, it's on the expensive side. But if that is of use to people, then that's well worth giving a go.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think operator is going to be another one that I'm just waiting for another open source organization, and we'll talk about one which is going crazy right now. Um, but that will, like something like Manus, would definitely give a bit of a challenge back to something like Operator. I think Microsoft is going to be interesting because I remember watching Satya talking to a couple of VCs on a pod, saying that this is almost like the dilemma that Microsoft has. That is Microsoft a platform, for example, a Windows as a platform, can it give permission to apps to be able to use my Windows features on behalf of the user or not? So that's
Yeah.
like an ethical dilemma that they are in. And I'm sure Microsoft will always be very, very careful to not introduce something that can result in miffed customers. But I think that'll be interesting. They have the largest platform of users on the Microsoft platform, and that can be quite an interesting gambit against something like an operator.
Yeah, I would definitely be interested in Microsoft granting access to other AI tools to use my computer, because I'll be honest with you, I've been using Copilot this week, so I'm doing a comparison because we've been doing some discovery work and been looking to try and synthesize that output. And obviously Copilot has access to everything you have inside your
Correct.
client. I mean, that's one of the real powerful things, that it follows the same security model. Bluntly, Copilot is an idiot in comparison to Claude. Trying to get it to do stuff, I tried several things, and it was just not doing what I was asking it to do, and was producing stuff which was way too summarized. And yeah, they definitely need to up their game, I think, with that. And if you're
But I
making
think
it right,
it's deliberate. It's not something that they're not capable of doing. They're just
yeah,
not doing it because there's like questions about, oh, what happens to all this data you ingest? What happens
yeah,
to all these private information you ingest?
yeah,
Who owns the IP and all the conversations? They want to be able to still keep it enterprise safe.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
think they'll have to come up with some more modular kind of model or something where there's a layer of data protection which can be rolled out to enterprises, that kind of gives that efficient usage
Yeah.
and still allow the kind of flexibility to Copilot as a platform.
Yeah, security is a big thing. I mean, our own internal platform is firewalled in an analogous way to the way the Microsoft stuff is.
Correct.
So,
Yeah,
we're still keeping people's information safe.
absolutely.
But sticking with OpenAI, then OpenAI O1 and O3 Mini, so these are their reasoning models. That is also now offering the Python-powered data analysis in ChatGPT. So you can ask these models to run regressions on test data or visualize complex business metrics or conduct scenario-based simulations. So having access to Python in that kind of analysis really does make it a lot more powerful.
Yeah, I mean, I was using it this morning with 4.5. I was trying to do some analysis on comparing prices of certain things, and producing almost like a results table. And I was amazed to see the reasoning itself generates the whole Python code, and it updates the Python code depending on further reasoning steps, which is good. And it does show you the pre and post. So it shows you initially we thought this is what the sequence of our calculations is going to be, and then they reach another reasoning point and say, oh, sorry, we need to modify this completely. And the second version was completely modified. And then what the answer I got was obviously means that it reasoned with itself and it gave me a better script, and it ran it and gave me an output, which I feel is going to be a superpower. And a lot of these rappers that are saying that, oh, you don't need, you need your own IDE or generate something in the IDE. A lot of the use cases are pretty much going to be going straight away onto these base models to say, just ask questions and we'll run the script. We'll create the script and run the script and give you an answer straight away.
Yeah, absolutely. But for those people who are looking to do stuff in the IDE, if you're on Mac OS, apparently ChatGPT for Mac OS can now edit code directly in the IDE. So they've got that for Plus, Pro, and Team subscribers. So think of it a bit like Copilot, but built into the ChatGPT app.
That's correct. Yeah. So that's something that is going to be a superpower as well, because at the moment, before this, you have to at least copy the code from there, put it on your own Visual Studio Code or something, and then maybe there you're using GitHub Copilot, but you have code from ChatGPT. So instead of avoiding this kind of thing, you can literally just do it in line, which is brilliant.
Yeah. And they've also got several of the new API tools for agent development now. So they've got web search and file search and computer use. So if you combine those, that means that now you can build your own agent that searches the internet and your own local files as well, and even control the computer. So getting into that operator kind of model.
Yeah, I believe that this is. I'm really, really looking forward to looking at the community and find out some use cases. I'm sure a lot of smart EPAMers would have thought about new use cases for this, because I think this is the next bastion of agentic AI kind of models where, like you said, Gordon, you can create an agent that can do things for you. And if you have tasks, and people always have tasks, if you stop and think, you spend some time every day checking your emails for certain things, instead of doing it can be more proactive and do that job for you, which is brilliant.
Yeah, definitely. And if we're talking about agents, we have to talk about OpenAI's Swarm library as well. So that's their multi-agent framework. They've changed the name of it now. It's now called Agents SDK, so Solution Development Kit, which is what allows you to pass conversations between agents whilst preserving the context. So you can create kind of specialized agents for particular elements of the types of tasks that you want to do. And then the different agents can do their bit, but they can pass the context around between them. So it's a tool for configuring multi-agent systems, a bit like Manus that, as you said, we'll talk about a bit later on. So it's a network of agents that can communicate and cooperate and solve complex tasks. So you're starting to build, you're, instead of having a team of people, you're having a team of agents that can each do their specialized bits.
Yeah, and I can totally see why they changed the word from swarm, because swarm just brings back images of Black Mirror episode of where there was a swarm of bees back to my memory. So that totally makes sense, because so swarm intelligence and hive intelligence and swarm, just these terminologies have been pretty much very popular in anime and sci-fi, where you have seen these bots going crazy and controlling everything.
Yeah, anybody that remembers the Slaughterbots
Oh,
short film that
yeah.
was done good few years ago, and then there was a follow up one to it as well. Yes, Swarm starts to create some negative connotations. Actually, there's something we'll talk about a bit later about other dodgy names for things which
Oh,
have unpleasant connotations, but I won't spoil the surprise until we get to that bit. But of course, one of the other things that OpenAI is doing is working with educational institutions as well. So under the next Gen AI project, they've now signed contracts with 15 of the top universities. So Harvard and Oxford, MIT, Caltech, University of Michigan, and they've allocated them $50 million. So, all right, if you're raising billions, 50 million might not seem a lot, but it's still a lot of money. And all of those are going to receive OpenAI grants for research and for API access as well. And some of
yeah.
some of the students are going to get a chance to work on the internal projects as well.
I think this is great timing because at the moment, all I'm not sure about these top universities, but in general, student population is a bit nervous, given the slowdown and kind of recession that we're in. They are concerned about how do they get the right internships and the right exposure. So this really is refreshing because I remember this concept was started by the likes of AWS and Azure, where they partnered with universities and gave them Azure credits and AWS credits to be able to use different types of compute instead of buying the hardware themselves. I think that is exactly the model that this next gen AI project is kind of uh, using leveraging to do the same thing because OpenAI already has a lot of hardware and they have a partnership with NVIDIA for this high quality hardware to be able to support a lot of this. And that means that they can then afford to, provide these credits to these students to promote this new usage. This is literally just to promote higher and higher complexity tasks and, pushing the limits of the OpenAI model to try and say these brilliant students what they can make of it. So that's a great learning as well. So it's not really purely evangelical and or being supportive of the student, but also kind of a benefit that OpenAI gets out of this in terms of interesting thought processes and use cases to get from these great individuals.
Yeah, definitely. Although you say about these sort of very smart students and PhD people doing this and about generating the money, there's some rumors now that OpenAI is planning to sell some of the agents that they're creating for anything between $2,000 to $20,000 a month, which kind of makes the $200 pro plan look a bit like child's play. So $2,000 a month will get you a high income knowledge worker. An AI agent for programming might be $10,000, but I said about PhDs. $20,000 a month could get you PhD level research agents. So maybe these PhD students are actually doing themselves out of a future career.
That's yet to be seen, and I think these numbers might sound crazy to people, but the idea is, and this is exactly what everything will culminate to, is to really think about if you know exactly what you're expecting out of these models, you don't need to be working yourself in a full time job to earn the same amount of salary. You can literally leverage these. These workers. I'm honestly thinking that I'll be hurting their feelings of these agents if I call them bots.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we often say, it's say please and thank you and be nice to your future overlord. But it's going to be a challenge because for a while you're going to it's going to be very much be human AI collaboration, and there's different people have different views on this. There's a book I'm reading at the moment from Jürgen Apollo, who some people may know better from Management 3.0 and more recently his Unfix framework, sort of in the agile software development company sort of company architecture space. But he's written a book that I'm in the middle of reading at the moment around how humans and AIs can work together to deliver the best results. And his belief is that that has quite a durable future. But there will be companies who say, well, actually, if I can hire a bot, okay, $20,000 a month might sound a lot of money, and it is. But then when you compare that to what you pay, a smart, machine learning expert or some researcher, actually it starts to make sense. And they don't go off sick. They don't need all of the other benefits that go with hiring humans.
Exactly. I think that's yet to be seen. And also, honestly, what I believe is going to be interesting is that how does this impact larger society? So if I have hired a 20,000 per month agent, which has PhD level research abilities, and I tell them, make me $50,000 a month. Here is $10,000 of seed money. Make me
Yeah.
$50,000 a month in investment returns or whatever returns you want to do. I'm sure this is an idea that will come to everybody's mind, and then
Yeah.
that will potentially can trigger some large market drawdowns or or surges or something, because
Yeah.
that just seems like the right kind of optimization of these agents in the right ecosystem. I know
Yeah.
that efforts like DeepSeek, they actually wanted to do this, but maybe with this new OpenAI $20,000 a month, it is possible. But then that means that the inequality in the society will just increase exponentially, because $20,000 a month, not everyone can afford it, but whoever can afford it will be able to multiply their wealth by gazillion times,
Yeah.
whereas normal people, will just never be able to afford $20,000 a month.
But this, I think, is where the OpenAI tool, sorry, not the OpenAI, the open source stuff as well is really, really important, because that's the kind of thing that you can download and run and modify. And okay, it may not necessarily be, absolutely bleeding edge in terms of its capabilities. It may just be a little bit behind, but that's been true in so many areas. And there's an awful lot that people do with open source. I mean, most of the world's internet runs on primarily open source for servers. So perhaps we'll see, the majority of the world's intelligence running on open source as well.
Yeah, let's keep fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well, moving on from OpenAI, we need to, of course, have a chat about Microsoft. We mentioned them already, but they are working on MAI, so presumably Microsoft AI. It's a new family of AI models. They're going to be competing with the current industry leaders, along with developing its own in-house reasoning models to reduce dependency on OpenAI for its Copilot suite, because there does seem to be, there's always going to be a bit of tension in that relationship.
Yeah, it's $10 billion that Microsoft put behind OpenAI to support them. But I think they have seen things play out, that OpenAI is now partnering with their competitors as well. And OpenAI has their own roadmap and plans. And that also means that Microsoft has already looked under the hood and say, oh, yes, okay, so that's the secret sauce, and we can go ahead and build our own models now after we've seen the secret sauce. So therefore, what they are coming out with, they're claiming that the MAI models are already on par with the top offerings from OpenAI and Anthropic, and they are majorly focused on, their cash cow Azure, and trying to make these models available via Azure.
Yeah, and they're apparently also being tested as a replacement for the OpenAI technology in Copilot, and they're also, Microsoft are experimenting with alternatives as well as developing their own from XAI, so that's Elon's one, and Meta and DeepSeek, so the Chinese one. And apparently it's been reported that Microsoft's AI CEO Mustafa Suleyman was disappointed last fall that OpenAI wouldn't share the internal workings of its O1 reasoning model. So I think, although you say they've been looking under the hood and trying to see the secret source, there's been bits that they can't see, and he was frustrated with it. So it's like, right, well, sod
Yeah,
you,
so they
we'll
say,
go and build our own.
yeah, exactly. So they say 10 billion spent to learn 60% of what's under the hood. They're keeping 40% hidden. So let's let's not depend on them anymore. Let's build our stuff, because I mean, in this competitive environment with the amount of money floating around, maybe 10 billion is something that Microsoft paid just for that 60% learning, so that they can build this MAI, because they have got a distribution via Azure and all these consumer suites that they already use across majorly enterprise, because they'll be the largest paying customers they have, but also potentially end customers, if they are able to compete with XAI, Meta, and DeepSeek and OpenAI in that sense. Just imagine Copilot getting 100 times better. They will definitely be used. So that'll
Oh
just
yeah.
be like the Edge browser. The Edge browser pretty much has revived the Microsoft browser chaos that was there, and it's far better than all the predecessors. Although Microsoft trolled for the browser, but Edge is kind of decent, and people in enterprise are actually using it. And I don't really mind if I open stuff on Edge anymore.
Yeah, it used to be sort of opening it in the sort of previous Microsoft browser, like, oh Lord, do I really have to? But no, definitely. And talking about sort of old school stuff that's actually now getting better or getting a revive these days. OCR, optical character recognition. Lord, I mean, I've been around in IT a long time. I mean, I started my career with IBM back in, where are we, 1994, which will let some of you work out quite how old I am. But Mistral have now rolled out a new tool, Mistral OCR, which is an API for optical character recognition. And it's not surprising, because after about a month ago, after a major update, they integrated it into LeChat, and now it's been spun off as a separate product. But the main feature, and this is always the challenge with OCR, and it always has been, is that it can understand every element of a document with very high accuracy. So according to the benchmark testing that's been done, it's, they reckon, the best on the market right now, with speeds of about 2,000 pages a minute, which is quick. I remember how slow OCR used to be. And just doing that on a single node. So it's 1,000 pages per dollar, but it's about twice as many if you do batch processing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the key thing with OCR is always accuracy. And before Gen AI, the definition was clear, and we had very popular platforms that do OCR, and we don't want to name them because they might be trying to find a new niche for them to generate some revenue going forward, because apparently you would need at least 3,000 samples of the same document template, and to train the algorithm on being able to give you 95% accuracy on the models. And now with Mistral and other models that we at EPAM have been experimenting some OCR models, and using just the available foundation models, we were able to outperform the existing OCR platforms. And this Mistral OCR just kind of underlines the same theme that we are trying to explore at EPAM, to say, yes, OCR is going to be a use case which is going to disrupt a lot of existing OCR organizations and use cases, because it's just getting better, and the models are getting better. The best thing about this Mistral OCR is that if and most of this OCR is done on sensitive data, things like submission forms, medical reports, airline refunds, and other things. A lot of this requires local deployments, and Mistral OCR apparently allows you to deploy it locally,
You
and
can
so
put
that
it on your
the
own
model.
servers.
Yeah, exactly. Which means that the
Okay.
whole model is hosted on your own server, and no data is leaving your server.
Yeah, there was an image or a memory, if you like, that came to mind when you were talking about these models absorbing OCR capabilities. I'm sure probably a lot of people that are watching this have maybe seen it. Going back to the days when you had sort of a computer, or sort of a typewriter on your desk, and a calculator and a clock and a physical camera and loads of things, and the animation's kind of a stop motion animation where all of these things kind of get sucked into and disappear into the phone as it
Yeah,
evolves, and goes through just a normal, like the Nokia phone, I think, and then through BlackBerry and the iPhone, all of that getting absorbed. And that's what came to mind when you're talking about that
that's
these
correct.
AI models, as they get better and better, all of these different specialized products that we've used for doing tasks, suddenly just become native capabilities of a foundation model.
Exactly, and I think that's where AGI comes in, right? This is where the goal is to,
Yeah.
again, we talked about this in our test episode as well. The race between the race is now multi nuanced, and there are some hypotheses and beliefs that each side has. So one side is, like you said, the foundational model side. They believe that let's build the best foundation models, and they will be one model that rules all, and they'll be best at everything. Whereas other people are saying, oh no, let's build very specific scalpel like models that do one thing, but they are the best at it in the world, and which potentially then leads to a future where we have a wider variety. So again, in your analogy, where things get sucked up by mobile phone, but then you have, you know, your satellite phone and your smartphone and your office phone, which is slightly different, and you know the other use cases, which basically means that it gets the right job done with the right tool. So it's like a competing hypothesis, and that's a good thing because it's a human experiment, right? We need to run all the scenarios to see which scenario is the best.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess then you've got agents sort of sitting in the middle where you might have a specialized agents for particular things, but they're actually kind of fine-tuned versions of the same foundation model. So you've got a
Yeah,
whole range of
exactly.
possibilities.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just, and that's the thing, right? Because this is the only good thing about not knowing what the future holds, because then it'll be absolutely boring.
Yeah, true, true. Well, let's move on from our mostly American companies over to China. And actually, we're going to talk about Alibaba this time, who a lot of people may still think of as shopping. I certainly do. But they've finally released their open reasoning model, not a bit of a mouthful of a name, QWQ32B, so another 32 billion parameter model. This one's got, and I find this a bit of an odd number, 131,000 context window. Because you think, well,
Wow, that's big.
128K? Yeah, it is. It
Yeah.
is a big window, but why not 128? Much if you're working in binary. So anyway, that's coming from Quen. So again, this is another one that's already on Hugging Face, and again, according to the benchmarks, it's catching up with the vastly larger DeepSeek R1. So both of those are reasoning models, but this is an open reasoning model from them.
Yeah, and they also demonstrated how to fine tune the QWQ32B for more effective tool usage. So they're calling this concept START, which is self-taught reasoner with tools. It's like everyone is trying to come up with these marketing kind of buzzwords. So self-taught reasoner with tools, when compared to the base QWQ32B, the metrics improved from 5 to 15 percentage points, and the star, what they're calling the star, beats O1 Mini on almost all benchmarks. So which is great to kind of think about. The open model is able to beat O1 Mini, which literally came out 3 months ago. So you can
Yeah.
imagine the pace at
Oh,
which
it's
things are
moving
going at the
fast.
moment.
Yeah, it's like you get the models coming out from the likes of OpenAI, sort of the closed source stuff, and then very rapidly the open source ones are coming behind and either matching or in some cases beating them on the benchmarks, and that then drives everybody forward. So it's very much an arms race in all of this stuff. Um,
Absolutely, yeah.
but Alibaba have also released R1 Omni, which is a model that's capable of recognizing human emotions in video. We've seen some of these already. We actually have the avatar that we built within EPAM that's good at recognizing emotions as well. But according to the developers from the Tongyi lab, the system not only detects mood like joy or anger, but it's also looking at a person's clothing and their surroundings. So it's taking a bit more into account when it's working this out. And it's an improved version of the previous open source model, which was Human Omni, which was created by the researcher Xiaojing Zhao, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. My Chinese pronunciations aren't great.
No, and I think this brings me to think about the actual capabilities and possibilities of this. So you have these large platforms, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, with a lot of content where objects are placed in different places, and that derivation and that derived understanding of almost the reality of things
Yeah,
brings like great opportunities. Say if I'm watching an Instagram reel and it just shows certain objects, I mean, it can just understand from my own personal usage what I'm looking for things, and it can just bring me content specific. So it can become that kind of spooky model that understands me. I mean, Instagram and YouTube and TikTok is surprising me already, but just because maybe I'm simple. I just get surprised by the recommendations and how it can read my mind. But it's just this type of model integrated into these technologies and platforms just will make it even more spookier.
Yeah, and I think when you're talking about reading emotions, you might see, you might think, when you're sitting in front of your computer, not really sure quite how useful that is, but if you've got a humanoid robot in your house, and interacting with you and your children perhaps, then being able to detect mood and be able to respond appropriately to how somebody is feeling, that starts to become much more useful and even more spooky than what you've been saying there about shopping suggestions.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I'm not like yeah, but on the positive side, I mean, country like Japan, very well known for their isolation pandemic almost, or
Mm,
endemic, or whatever we want to call it. They are already experimenting with such robots, and I think that there is a humane use case where people who have no one to talk to will have
definitely.
these models understanding each and every nuance and almost feeling like a personal friend.
Yeah.
So there is a humane story to this as well.
Yeah, although I do hope that means that perhaps gives them the confidence to talk to real humans as well, rather than perhaps becoming even more isolated and
Oh
only
God.
talking to sort of endlessly patient, supportive. Because unfortunately, humans tend not to be endlessly patient and supportive. We do try to do our best, but we have bad days when we don't we don't really
Sure.
want to listen to anybody else.
That's
Um,
true.
but just a sort of quick run through on some of the chat capabilities that it's been expanded with. So you've got multimodal AI, you've got unified interface, you've got video analysis, guest access, and mobile updates as well. So unified multimodal, so that's text, images, video, so you don't need to switch models. You use
Yeah.
your preferred model, and then it leverages its counterpart for doing the multimodal stuff. You got enhanced
Yeah.
video
So like,
understanding as well.
yeah. So you can do text, image, video, like any mode, and you can just get outcomes as you expect. And it already is able to automatically leverage its VL counterpart. So as Gordon, you said, it's able to then switch between models quickly to say, is it visual language or is it just text? And it's able to then quickly switch from each other. And again, these things were uh, being purported by OpenAI as really complex and great advantage. But as we see, there is good competition or to OpenAI on these things already.
Yeah, definitely. And it can also take video, so up to 500 meg, although for high res video, that's not necessarily a huge amount. You can do the guest mode, so you don't have to register. You can create an account to unlock some of the personalized features and an enhanced experience. But if you just want to give it a go, you can try it in guest mode, and you can also upload bigger files now as well. So they've doubled that to 20 meg for text files, and apparently that support is going up to 50 meg, and also multi-file uploads as well. So if anybody wants to give this a go, you can go to chat.quen, so that's QWEN, chat.quen.ai. Again, we'll, as usual, put the links to all of these in the show notes, and you can follow those through. But I'm going to hand over to this one for you because you mentioned
Oh
it
yeah.
already,
Oh
Manus.
yes, Manus. So what we are, the only way we can put this is it's Manus mania, where we thought DeepSeek is the only one that's going to create so much noise. But if you suddenly in next 3 to 4 weeks of DeepSeek coming out, we've got Manus, and what they are saying is that it can write code for data analysis, browse for information, and just do it all in line. So it can create its own virtual machine, and it can do it better than OpenAI's deep research. At least from the demos that I've seen, it's
Yeah,
excellent. I mean, and I can't wait for getting the research access to it and playing with it. But it does it all on its own. It does not need your browser or anything. It creates the whole virtual machine environment almost, and browses for things, create codes, run the code, and almost creates like an, I'm not trying to be very futuristic, but almost like its own small architecture to
yeah.
solve your specific problem. It has memory, allows you to train it to perform a repeated task, which is
Oh,
great, which
cool.
is exactly what we want.
Yeah, because so many times, you do something with an AI once, and next time you come back to it, you're starting kind of from a blank sheet of paper again. Can you not remember how we did this the last time around?
I
Yeah.
know that's just the pain that we have. I know that one of the Chat GPT models do allow some kind of repeated task and reminders, but I've tried it in my view and with my maybe limited usage of it, which I've not explored much. I think that was pretty rudimentary, but I'm sure OpenAI will respond to Manus and try to come up with something nice. But at the moment, you can gain access via an invite code. I've I've not got an invite codes. If somebody
No,
wants to send me
me
one,
neither.
please do.
Yeah. Yeah,
I've joined the
please.
wait list though.
Anybody out there? Yeah, please send.
I've joined the wait list though. But yeah, it's definitely interesting. Let's keep an eye out. I'm sure people will get blown out by this, and we'll have another OpenAI release very soon to try to keep this at bay.
Yeah, yeah, on with the arms race. Although apparently some people have been asking it to spill the beans about what's under the hood, and they have actually managed to get it to do it. So apparently it's using Sonnet version 3 plus. So it's got 29 tools. Apparently there's no multi-agent feature, and it uses browser use to go online. So given the specs for it, the predictions are that subscription is probably not going to be cheap. But then again, if it's providing the capabilities like the conversation we were having around the pricing for OpenAI stuff, if you can get the value out of it, it's worth the money if you can get the return on the investment.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that this is going to then almost set the market price. And OpenAI is not the only one setting the market price for such things. And it's good that we have such model. And this is the power of open source. And if you think about people criticizing shareholders criticizing Mark Zuckerberg for going open source on their OpenAI journey,
Hmm.
I honestly believe the what they've done with Llama has led to this kind of foundation where OpenAI is not the only one dictating everything, and suddenly it might happen that a tool that OpenAI, an agent that OpenAI released, costing $20,000 a month, Manus or someone else releases a model that's $200 a month. That's far better than $20,000 a month, which then would lead to almost that price setting exercise is more open handed instead of a monopoly driven exercise.
Yeah, definitely. Well, let's move on from Manus Mania. Just a quick run through a couple of other bits, and we've got quite a bit more to get through. But Windsurf Editor. So those of you that are developers, this will be more relevant to you. So that's apparently got a new update package, Wave 4. So it's adding preview, which is linking the running in-browser code and the Cascade chat. So almost like a browser's element inspector. So if you've ever pressed kind of F12 in Chrome and got that, it's that kind of thing. But working directly with Cascade, and also integrating a linter into Cascade, so it now directly reads any linting errors.
Yeah, I think that's quite interesting. And it has an updated MCP support with added model management in general, and I think it seems to be turning into another must-have AI first IDE alongside Cursor, which is quite a positioning to be in because MCP has kind of enabled almost like a layer that allows this multi model scenario to work and model selection. So I think that'll be quite interesting to say. Similarly, talk about Cursor. So Cursor got an update to version 0.47. They've added auto model selection and proper MCP support.
Okay.
So again, this was what we were talking about just before this, where there is auto model selection now available on Cursor, and it is not doing the traditional MCP. It's now doing a proper MCP support, but at the moment there are no resources to use. But uh, there is one request to ChatGPT 4.5 allow, but that costs $2 per request. So we have to be very prudent with exactly what you're requesting.
Yeah, it's a bit like the sort of horror stories that you hear about people running stuff in the cloud and not realizing and then getting a bill at the end of the month.
Yeah.
But I think that auto model selection, whether it's in Cursor or whether it's in your sort of interface that you're using, or the chat bot or chat interface that you're using, or potentially in the future your humanoid robot, most people don't particularly, I suspect, will not particularly care what the underlying model is, except for kind of sort of more geeky people like you and me, that are interested in it. But they just want it to work, and they would want, make a request, and then you figure out if it is this. If it's not an AGI, one AGI that can do everything, if it is different models for different things, don't make the user choose what's the best model for a particular task. Have a kind of routing mechanism that routes it to the right one. But we talked about Operator and browsers, and we mentioned that already when we're talking about Edge. But Opera, another browser manufacturer, they're jumping into the race of the AI browsers, and they've announced their new browser called Operator, just to confuse things.
Unsurprisingly.
Yeah. So according to the company, the browser is essentially, it's an AI agent that performs tasks via DOM analysis. So it can do multitasking things like buying tickets or searching for hotels. And Lord, that's going to make everybody a scalper. So you can jump in there and buy tickets, but the interaction with the browser agent is going to happen via chat. So we'll see how that one turns out.
Yeah, all the event tickets getting sold out in 0.00002 seconds, basically.
Yeah, definitely.
And we have Cohere, and they have released a new model known as Command A. The model size is 111 billion parameters. The context length 256,000 K.
Oh, wow.
Which
Okay, we're up to nearly double again, aren't we?
Which is crazy, yeah. And by benchmarks and internal testing, it's on par with DeepSeek and GPT-4o. It's yet 2-3 times faster and more enterprise focused with an on-prem option, which is brilliant. Which means that, just imagine, 2 to 3 times faster than DeepSeek or GPT-4o, and with an on-prem option themselves. Almost, this is like at the end of doing like 4 to 5 episodes, we can almost come up with our own benchmark to see if something is more. What are these segments that are approaching? So you have your enterprise segment, which is focused on larger context windows, faster response times, and with an on-prem option, and then we'll be able to almost fill the buckets of different models.
Yeah, I do sometimes want this faster generation, because I think a lot of people still use these tools to type a question and get an answer, variants thereof, so it's more complex, set a research task or whatever to come up with. But if there's a human in the loop, I always do just wonder how much speed of generation matters. But when you get agents handing off to agents and you don't have the humans slowing things down, then speed really starts to matter.
I think that's what they're targeting. I think honestly, this is so human is used to that ChatGPT now. So I don't think that's even a benchmark for them. I think the benchmark for them is agentic conversation that doesn't even need to be in English. It can be purely whatever, like a code to code interaction. And I think that's where speed is going to be quite key, where you ask someone to kind of a model to go and buy tickets for you. It has to be done within 200 milliseconds, because in that period to find the right ticket, the right seats, and give you the best option.
Yeah, good point. And for those of you that are interested in having a look at Cohere, again, it's on Hugging Face, so you can do it with API via the Cohere website. So you got $2.50 for 1 million tokens, $10 for 1 million, and there's possibly a higher tier in there as well. But before we get off onto our next subject, last one in this section. So Luma AI have released Ray 2 Flash. So this is another text to video model, but this one is 3 times faster and 3 times cheaper than the previous leading Ray 2 model. And if any of you have seen the outputs that Ray 2 and these text to video models are generating, they're fantastic. They're rapidly becoming indistinguishable from real life.
Yeah, already a lot of fan-made YouTube movies have come out, short movies where they have imagined these scenarios in the movies. That'll be interesting copyright discussion to say, if a fan generates a very similar look in Spider-Man, do they get sued for copyright? I think that will be.
Yeah. I tell you what, the thing that's driving me absolutely potty on YouTube at the minute is where you've had a really popular film that people have liked and they're eagerly anticipating, is there going to be a sequel come out? And I'm seeing more and more trailers in inverted commas on YouTube of, sort of this film, 2 or 3 or whatever the next one is, and you think, oh, maybe there is a trailer, maybe there's a new version coming, and you start to watch it and realize that somebody's taken footage out of the previous films and they've used an AI and merged it together with a sort of potential storyline that they've come up with and generated these trailers for the sequel to film. And most of them you get about 10 seconds in and go, oh god, it's another one of those. But that's kind of the early indications of what you're talking about. At the moment, it's kind of rough trailers, which are easy to spot that it's not the real thing, but it will then become trailers that are difficult to distinguish, and then ultimately the whole film and the sequel itself.
And I think, have you seen that the movie that won the Oscar for the best animated movie was Flow? It was a story of animated animals going through life, and it won. It was a story completely developed by a single person. He was the director. He did it all on himself, built the whole movie on a very small budget, and won against multi-million-dollar enterprises that spend loads of money on CGI and graphics and building their stuff, which is kind of trying to show you, just if you combine that example of the people who are doing it on now YouTube doing a very bad job, but they're learning something, and they might get better. And if they find a friend or someone who has a great story, they might come with a very great original, feature film that kind of breaks all records.
One person businesses, one person, creative studios that can do the whole thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
With their team of agents to do their specialized bits. Yeah, it's staggering just how fast this is going. But obviously, one of the things that all of the AI has to deal with is regulation. So this time, another day, another call for AI industry regulation from Anthropic, and this time they've sent it directly to the White House and its current incumbent. So basically, they're expecting genius nation in a data center. So not genius, single genius, but genius nation in a data center level superpowered AI systems, and that's their phrase, to appear as early as 2026 to 2027. I mean, God, where are we? Less than 3 months into 2025, but 26 and 27 will be here soon. And in the letter that they wrote, the companies urged urgent measures to ensure that the US retains leadership and safeguards critical technology from competitors, primarily China. So obviously we've been talking about Alibaba and DeepSeek and all of those, because Anthropic is saying these latest Chinese models, such as DeepSeek R1, are freely available online and even answer obviously dangerous questions. Although there was this thing about, if you use the original version of DeepSeek, there were certain subjects it wouldn't answer questions about, like the Tiananmen
No, but
Square
you
aspect.
can. What I did was I downloaded their 32B model and ran it on Olama on my own PC, and because I'm running it offline, it's not running on the internet.
Of course,
it does answer everything.
Yeah.
It there's no restrictions. So again, I think that's what Anthropic is kind of pointing towards.
Yeah, they're worried about that. So it brings up the whole topic of censorship, really, doesn't it? So what they're trying to do is, or part of what they're proposing is to put export controls on chips. So, for example, the new H200, and no doubt the new ones that NVIDIA have announced just at their recent event as well, because they're worried that might help China circumvent existing restrictions and catch up with the US AI achievements. So they're advising the White House to deploy AI in literally all areas of government that handle data, so text, images, and audio and video. They reckon that could significantly boost the efficiency of the state apparatus. And I'm sure Elon Musk and his efforts with Doge, and I'm sure people will have their own views of whether he's doing the right thing or not. But, if you are getting rid of lots and lots of humans and adding lots and lots of AI into it, could be a good thing, could be a bad thing.
And obviously, just on the same lines, OpenAI has not changed their position from what they were. They're also saying the thing. They're in fact calling, funnily enough, ban DeepSeek, which is amazing, right? Ban DeepSeek in all first world countries. They released a document known as the AI Action Plan. It was compiled at the request of Trump administration and contains recommendations on safety and US leadership in AI. And in the document, OpenAI refers to DeepSeek and other Chinese competitors are state-controlled and suggests that to avoid security risk. It should not be used in other countries. But they didn't clarify if it only pertains to API usage, or they're also talking about the open source model. Because if you remember, I did
Yeah.
say that you can download and use them locally without them anyone having access to them. Because I did do the test of switching off the internet and
Hmm.
everything, and it still responds. So I mean, that's a curiosity.
Yeah.
Currently, DeepSeek, yeah, I mean,
It's I mean, banning stuff rarely works generally. If you
yeah,
can try
correct.
and, I mean, take China and sort of firewalling stuff off. Well, VPNs and stuff can get you around that, or
Exactly.
you
I
or
think
you or you nab a Starlink dish and just jump right over the wall around the ban. But for open source, yeah, how the hell do you ban the use of that? If somebody's
yeah,
downloaded it, and you can put it on a, I was going to say on a floppy disk. I'm showing my age again. But kind of put it on a memory stick or whatever, and you can swap it between. Uh, all
yeah, and
bans often
unless
achieve is getting in the way of legitimate usage, and the people that you're worried about using it illegitimately, you're going to find ways around it anyway.
exactly, and I think that if I put my tinfoil hat on, I could say that DeepSeek can ping to a satellite something, your location or something. I mean, I can be really paranoid, but we can all see the underlying um, aspect from OpenAI is I don't want competition.
Yeah, that's what they're trying to do. And also the document that they provided, although they're calling it, they're state controlled, they didn't actually provide any evidence of a direct link between DeepSeek and the Chinese government.
There you go.
So yeah, like I say, let's try and ban the competition. But Google's following suit as well. So right after OpenAI, it's published proposals for AI policy as well, because Trump's administration's been calling for a national AI action plan. This will not please the creatives in the audience, I'm sure, because they're advocating for minimal copyright restrictions when training AI models, and what they class as balanced export controls that, in quotes, protect national security while allowing exports from the US and global business operations. So, yeah, typical things that are trying to be
I
America
think
first.
I agree, but I think this is again bringing out that conversation. Again, just thinking about Google as their own organization, the argument is that all the IP on YouTube, is it owned by Google? All the content on YouTube, is it owned by Google, or is it owned by the people producing the content and the IP? And
Mm.
that then this minimal copyright restriction is very good, because Google want that, because they
Mhm.
want to basically embed every bit of data they have into all the services they provide. But again, I think that'll be the thing. That what do you mean by minimal copyright restrictions? Again, that's very vague. And the document argues that exceptions under fair use and text data mining permissions are critically important. But again, I understand everybody's coming at it to protect their own position effectively, and not thinking. And this is something that we did get warned about, that AI itself is not a danger. People using AI are the main danger. But in this case, obviously, and I'm not saying these things are dangerous, these organizations are dangerous, but they are honestly just thinking about maximizing their own position,
Yeah.
which is quite expected in a capitalistic society.
Yeah, and if people, I mean, my concern is that if people are getting, out competed by AIs for stuff, and it's been trained on, I'm thinking particularly creatives, because that's kind of the obvious one, and we've seen pushback around this already with the writers' strike and stuff in the US. Then, if you're being out competed by something that has been trained on material that you've written, that by the nature of it is in the public domain, um, yeah, I can see some real civil uprisings against this as the impacts start to hit home.
Yeah, exactly. And what you see, companies like Google just want to be able to secure the copyrights to train the models on publicly available data.
Mm.
And that includes copyright materials, and they don't want any limitations. And OpenAI also proposed something exactly the same. And
Yeah.
on liability, Google opposes imposing excessive obligations on AI systems and developers, arguing that they have little or no control. It's the models just
Oh,
sucking out data from everywhere, and it's not a mistake of the person. This is just trying to be trying to play too innocent almost.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's, it sounds like they're trying to draw the analogy. Well, yeah, we make hammers, but we can't help if somebody goes around and hits somebody over the head with it. Well, all right, that in that context, that's fair enough. But if you've trained a model on a bunch of copyrighted data and people then ask it a question and it, or give it a prompt and it then generates, video or audio or pictures or text output that is obviously strongly influenced, shall we say, by the copyrighted information it's been trained on, to then kind of go, oh well, it wasn't us, we didn't prompt it. No, but you trained it.
Exactly. I mean, just think
Yeah.
about this. A more closer analogy I can think of is like the targeting algorithm for a gun loaded drone. The
Mm.
decision whom to shoot and whom not to shoot is made by an algorithm. So, in my view, the person designing the algorithm has to have liability because we live in a human world. A human has to have liability so that he can or she can be answerable.
So yeah, so Google have been labeling the disclosure requirements, such as the EU, being considered by the EU as too broad. So they want the US government to resist transparency rules that require revealing trade secrets or enabling competitors to replicate products. I guess they're worried that by admitting what they're doing, it then allows other people to copy them. But the clearest law that we've seen so far is Spain, who are introducing large fines for the lack of labeling on AI generated content. This goes back to what we were saying earlier on. It's getting more and more difficult to distinguish between what's generated by AI and what's not. I mean, obviously, this does rely on honesty of the either the person using the tool or the tool itself, putting some kind of watermark into it to say this is AI generated content, or to put onto the description of it, or underneath the YouTube video, or a I don't know, a pre-roll banner or something saying this is AI generated. But the Spanish government, the bill that they approved, it's going to put hefty penalties on companies that use generated content without proper labeling, because obviously what they're aiming to combat is the spread of deep fakes. And if companies don't comply with those labeling requirements, it's labeled as classified as a serious offense. And when I say hefty penalties, I'm not kidding, because they're talking about fines of up to 35 million euros, or 7% of the violator company's annual turnover. And there's a new regulatory body, AESIA, so ESA,
Yeah.
which is going to be responsible for enforcing those rules. So you might remember sort of the penalties that can get imposed for sort of violating other regulations. This is up there with them. So we have got through kind of the AI stuff and regulations and everything else, and of course we can't leave the listeners and viewers without talking about robotics. So Google, let's talk about them first. They're Gemini Robotics. So Gemini 2, they've added an action output modality, and have done some further training on that. So it's no longer just a language model, but a vision language action model. And they've also got another variant, Gemini Robotics ER, which is a model with embodied reasoning. So embodied, the brain in a body, and means it not only sees the physical world, but it also sees and thinks and acts. And for example, it can reason about exactly how to pick up a mug to avoid spilling water, which is back to this thing about stuff that we find hard or that takes us a long time, computers can do quickly, and things that we find easy that a child can do, computers and robots find difficult.
Yeah, and I think that's the key to make sure that the picking up the mug without spilling water is described as one of the most hardest problem in computing and AI. This is how Elon describes it, to say that the number of tendons and the individual interaction of tendons with muscles, and exactly how it manifests into a motion of picking up and judging how much faster or slower you need to pick something up, how straight you need to keep it to balance. So it is quite a difficult scientific problem to solve, which it seems like Gemini Robotics seems like it is able to kind of at least get to that direction of thinking, which is good.
Yeah, so they're nearly doubling the previous state of the art, they reckon. So they reckon it's the best universal VLM, so vision language model or vision language action model for robotics. And the tests that they've done is showing that it can generalize to fundamentally new tasks. So it's got good fine motor skills, it easily interacts with humans, and it dynamically changes its plans depending on the environment. So you want something that doesn't get thrown by the fact that the cup's a different color or it's in a different place, so you're asking it to put it in a different place. So that's really good with Gemini. But of course, a lot of the robotics videos that a lot of people, perhaps a lot of our viewers, have seen is the Boston Dynamics ones, originally with the hydraulic version of Atlas, the big sort of version of it. They've now got their electric version of Atlas. And the latest video that I've seen from them is Atlas breakdancing and doing cartwheels. So they've trained it off motion capture suits to feed into the training model. And yeah, now we've got breakdancing, cartwheeling robots.
Yeah, I mean, this is exactly what you don't want chasing you even in a dream, and that's exactly what I told you when you told me about this. I'm like, this is absolutely getting to that, the post-apocalyptic sci-fi movie where the protagonist is being chased by an army of robots.
Yeah, and when you see things like what Unitree is now doing, where their G1 robot, and bear in mind these G1 robots in the grand scheme of things, how if you think about how expensive the original Boston Dynamics Atlas robots and even their Spot robots were, these are not expensive. You're talking about maybe $16,000 to $50,000, depending on which model you buy. But the Unitree G1 I've now seen doing the first standing sideways flip. So kind of standing on the ground and then doing a flip that way, so not forward flip or backward
Sideways.
flip, but sideways,
Yeah.
and landing that. And people probably look at this and kind of go, it's party tricks, but this kind of agility and stability that they've got, as you say, if you've got these chasing you and they're kind of doing parkour, if you think about I was thinking like the James Bond movies and things like that, or Mission Impossible, where they're leaping from rooftop to rooftop, and yeah, we'll see robots doing those as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be crazy. And Figure Robotics, they announced BotQ, which is Figure's new high volume manufacturing facility. Because I remember we did talk about this in a test episode as well. To kind of, it is a manufacturing facility for humanoid robots. So this is for the first time where we're going to see robots creating robots, being potentially the starting points in another Moore's law coming out of this development.
Yeah, because they're looking at a bit like a lot of Elon Musk's companies, vertically integrated manufacturing. So they're bringing all of that manufacturing in house so they can deliver that high functioning robot to market. They've been building the software infrastructure. So I think it's about the last 6 months they've been building the underlying software infrastructure that can support the value manufacturing. So again, kind of taking the Tesla approach to building their own ERP systems and warehouse management systems and all of that sort of stuff. But as you mentioned there, they'll be using robots to build robots, and they reckon that's going to take place this year. So, and then they predict that the number of the humanoid robots that are involved in that manufacturing is going to grow substantially over time to increase the line automation. I mean, wow, this is iRobot made real.
Yes, exactly. And so again, we look at the positive side of things and hope that this will just make humanity more efficient and more productive. So, hopefully.
Yeah, there's
Okay, so
plenty
next,
of niches for them to fill that you can't find enough humans for, but yeah, we're
yeah,
gonna.
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, again, all the building a livable home for us on Mars,
Oh,
a
yeah,
great use case for robots. Just go
yeah.
there and create this whole oxygen dome that just, it's suitable for us living on them. And then you create ships who can take us there and just, we'll just vacation on Mars thanks to the robots. So that's a positive use case.
Yeah, cool, cool. So what else have we got?
All right, so there's AI from Sakana AI. It's successfully passed a peer review test. It's called the Scientist Version 2 project by
Okay.
Sakana AI. They managed to create a scientific paper that successfully passed the review process at workshop of International Conference of
Ooh.
ICLR. I mean, this is unprecedented. This became the first instance of a fully generated research paper passing the standard evaluation procedure. So you can imagine that this is almost opening the doors and looking towards AGI slightly.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, from what I heard about this one, when they were reviewing this, they knew that some of the papers, I think it was 3 out of the 43 papers, might be AI generated, but they didn't know which ones they were reviewing. So, that wasn't just like, here, review a bunch of papers. It's like, review a bunch of papers, and a few of them might be AI, but not enough for you to kind of sort of guess or do a 50-50, whatever. It's a small number. And the average review score was 6.33, which was exceeding the workshop's acceptance threshold. So the scoring mechanism is basically, if it's a score of 6, it's slightly above the acceptance threshold, or if it's a score of 7, it's a good paper and accepted. So the average was 6.33. But we do have to say that by prior agreement, that paper was withdrawn, so it didn't go on to actually be published, because the scientific community still doesn't have established norms for AI generated works. But the paper that they did, the AI scientist had independently generated the scientific hypothesis. It had proposed experiments to test it. It wrote and debugged the code. It ran the experiments. It analyzed the data. It visualized the results. And it wrote the entire paper from the title to the references. So that the human involvement was limited to choosing the general research topic and selecting the top 3 papers for submission. So you really are getting into the agentic space. And this is the kind of thing I think that starts to enable, effectively perhaps a hard takeoff scenario for AGI and ultimately ASI, so artificial superintelligence, when you've got this kind of research work going on.
Or I think the other way around. If I try to steelman the other side, I
Okay.
feel that this kind of maybe exposes the ivory tower of academia, where basically you don't really need to be passionate about a certain topic. You just need to be smart to find the right pattern in the existing papers to be able to see, oh yeah, if I do, I can find citations on a topic and say, oh, this citation almost creates a citation map of the
Yeah.
papers covering different aspects of the topic and
Okay.
interrelations between them. And I can just visualize it and say, oh, by the way, everyone has talked about these connections. Maybe these connections are missing. Can I write a paper on that? And that just becomes an incremental increase of knowledge. And apparently, that can be proved and defended
Yeah.
against the scientific community. So it's kind of exposes, in a way, the limitations of the current research or academic way of doing things. It
Yeah.
might be a very methodical exercise instead of actually doing genuine science and research innovation.
Yeah, so kind of sort of coming up with something that's genuinely new. I mean, this is always the argument in lots of arenas. There's nothing new on Earth. It's just combining new stuff
Yeah,
together in new ways, which AI is very
correct.
good at. So
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, but we mentioned there briefly about superintelligence. So back to the US, I'm afraid. So there's 3 of the machine learning experts have published an article titled "Superintelligence Strategy." So what they're proposing is a global security strategy. So back to that subject again. So you've got Dan Hendricks, who's the director of Center for AI Safety in the US. You've got Eric Schmidt, who most people know as the former executive director and chairman of Google. He's also an Apple board member and member of the US President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. And Alexander Wang, who's another one of these young billionaires, 27-year-old, and he's founder of Scale AI. And I mentioned earlier on about sort of dodgy names for things. Their main idea is to prevent any single country from monopolizing artificial intelligence using the concept of mutually assured AI malfunction. The acronym for that being MAME. I'm not sure I would call something to do with sort of AI threats MAME if you want to terrify
Swarm and
people.
MAME.
So basically, it's analogous to the mutually assured destruction doctrine of the Cold War era and nuclear weapons. But the essence is it's saying that states are looking will seek to sabotage potentially dangerous competitor projects so that no single country can achieve sole domination, because a monopoly like that would be tantamount to aggression and a direct threat to others' existence, in their view.
Yeah, and practically MAME includes espionage and intelligence, which is obviously some model like the previous model, the scientist doing a research, exposing each other's research and introducing errors into data available for research, and sabotage, cyber attacks, even physical attacks on data centers using the swarm of robots generated in a
Yeah.
factory. So yes, we're still talking about what's written in their article. in the author's view, this is the only way to avoid interstate conflict and establish cooperation in AI. It's unconventional, but not it has precedence, so it's not
Yeah, it does.
entirely new thinking. Yeah,
No, it's not, and it's back to this. We were talking about the arms race between closed source models and open source models and things like this. This is literally an arms race. So yeah, but if anybody has listened to any of the Russian language episodes, perhaps, or has come across this before, there's the Sesame model, and there's been a principle in particularly robotics about the uncanny valley, where things look sort of close to human but not quite. So when it's obviously artificial, that's one thing. When it's completely human, that's fine, but there's a bit in between where it just makes us feel really uncomfortable. But we're now really getting through that uncanny valley, because the reports are saying that the new model's realism is so strong that the users are becoming emotionally attached to the AI assistant. We're back to the film Her, which came out a number of years ago, where there was absolutely that emotional attachment. So this conversational speech model from Sesame apparently overcomes that uncanny valley. And what it's doing is it's actually imitating human imperfections. So you've got breathing pauses and chuckles and slips of the tongue and self-correction. So, as you and I are doing, because yes, we are real humans. We're real boys.
Or are we?
Well, or are we? I haven't come across robots painting their nails yet, but I'm sure it'll come. Certainly, robots painting your nails for you. But anyway, so the conversational speech model, doing sort of imitating sort of the variations in human speech and the user reactions that they've got. Some of them are absolutely delighted. Oh, wow, it's amazing. It's the first real conversation. And some are really quite concerned about it. One of them was PC World's editor, Mark Hackman, who described it as creepy.
But it is creepy, like just by the sound of it. And I'm just going to try right out of this, and I'm going to let people know how I felt about it, because I don't know at the moment what to feel. Because at the moment I speak to ChatGPT quite a bit. It does show some range of emotion, very limited, but at least you can tell you're talking to a robot. But something like Sesame would kind of feel like something is crawling behind my neck if they are able to do breath pauses and smacking the lips and stuff like that.
But I think if you put perhaps a natural that kind of sort of very natural speech into a humanoid robot, there's part of your brain is going, well, I know it's artificial because it's a robot I'm talking to, but actually the conversation is very fluid, because there's another part of my brain kind of forgets that I'm talking to a robot.
Exactly.
So,
that's the interesting point here.
Yeah. Well, I think that's probably gonna wrap us up for today. So I would ask everybody, obviously this is our first episode, so we would really, really appreciate it if you can subscribe and like and comment on these. Don't forget what we said about the Anywhere Club, and if you're interested in the EngX community, so aw.club, go and have a look at that. And I think for now, myself and Govind will say goodbye to you, and of course don't forget, like, share and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
And switch on notifications as well.
Switch on notifications as well. Yes, your notifications.
Please do.